20 years ago, a child went missing. 2 months ago, I found him. I don't know what I'm doing posting this to a damn internet forum, but I need to get it out somehow. Maybe writing it all down and posting it online will help. I doubt it, but it's worth a shot. Here goes nothing. My name's Daniel Mathis. I used to be a detective, but I retired 2 months back. Well, maybe retired isn't the right word. Forced to quit is more like it. Either way, I'm not on the force anymore. That's enough about me though. If I'm going to tell this story properly, then I need to start at the beginning. The very beginning. It started 20 years ago. A child went missing. A little boy, only 10 years old. His name was Johnny. I'd worked on a few missing person cases before, but this one was different. Johnny was walking back from school with some of his friends. It was getting dark, so he decided to take a shortcut through the woods. His friends were too scared to follow, so Johnny went alone. Needless to say, he never made it home. His parents reported him missing a few hours later. We searched the area for days. We questioned every sex offender in a 15-mile radius. Hell, we combed through every inch of that damn forest, but we never found him. Whoever took Johnny was smart about how they did it. They knew how to cover their tracks. It was almost like the kid vanished into thin air. Flash forward a month to mid-January, and I'm knocking on his parents' front door. It was snowing that day. I remember Paul, the kid's father, answered the door. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept in weeks. Despite this, he still made an effort to be polite. He gave me a weary smile and shook my hand. "Detective Mathis, come in," he said. "My wife's in the living room." His wife, Erin, was sitting with her back to me, staring at the TV. On the screen was a recording of Johnny, taken a couple months before he disappeared. It was grainy and blurry, the way home videos are. He had bright orange hair, freckles, and green eyes, just like his mother. In the video, he was dressed in a puffy jacket and playing around in a pile of leaves. It must have been taken in their front yard. Mommy, watch this," he yelled, getting a running start before leaping head first into the pile of leaves. He burst out a few seconds later, stray foliage clinging to his hair. "Wow, sweetie," Erin's voice said from behind the camera. Johnny flashed a beaming smile, showing off the gap between his front teeth before preparing to jump into the leaves once again. I stood in the doorway to the living room, watching the video unfold. Once it reached its end, Erin started it from the beginning. It was only a few seconds long. She gazed into the TV, rubbing her necklace with her thumb, silently whispering along. "Dear," Paul said, shaking her from her trance. "Detective Mathis is here." Erin looked over and paused the video. "Please, take a seat," Paul said, gesturing to a chair. Both he and Erin sat on the couch across from me, his hand holding hers as I started to speak. "Mr. and Mrs. McLean, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that it is not good news. We have to call off the search for Johnny." Erin broke down immediately, sobbing into her hands. Paul squeezed his eyes shut, trying to stop himself from doing the same. To be honest, I felt like crying as well. I fought to keep it going for as long as I possibly could. But, well, Johnny's been missing for a month now, and we've run out of leads. We're going to keep the case open, but until any new evidence comes to light, well, there's nothing we can do. The living room was filled with the sound of Erin's wails. Paul tried his best to comfort her, but he was barely keeping it together himself. "You promised," Erin started to shout. "You promised you would bring him home." "Mrs. McLean, I am. Why can't you bring him home?" she screamed. She rose to her feet and stormed upstairs, leaving Paul and I alone in the living room. "I'm sorry, I really am," I muttered, unable to look him in the eye. Paul wiped the tears away from his face before rising to his feet. "I think you should leave." I looked up at him, opening my mouth to say something, but no words came out. I simply nodded my head and rose to my feet. Paul was barely fighting back his tears as I left. As soon as I shut the door behind me, I could hear him break down and start to sob. Paul and Erin both died 15 years later. Paul started drinking and never stopped. Erin drove her car off a bridge in the middle of the night and drowned. I don't think they ever forgave me. Not really. To them, I was always the detective that failed to bring their child home. It was the 20th anniversary of the kid's disappearance. December 5th, when I came home to a letter. It had no return address or any distinguishing features. It was just a plain white envelope. There was no way it could have been delivered by a mailman. Someone dropped it off personally. I still have it somewhere, but I don't need to read it again to remember what it said. The words are branded into my brain like a hot iron. I sat at my dining room table, cut the envelope open, and started to read. Dear Detective Mathis, if things were different, I would have written this letter to Johnny's parents. I regret that I never got the opportunity to explain this to them. I know they never would have been able to understand, but I would have liked to explain it regardless. Enough about that. Though, with them gone, I have decided that the only one worthy of my confession is you. I watched you search for me, you know. I watched your interviews on the news. I watched as every lead you had went cold. In fact, I've seen you in person. You wouldn't have noticed me. I would have just been another face in the grocery store or on the street. But I noticed you. I always noticed you. Detective Mathis, I am sure you have figured it out by now, but I am the one who took Johnny. I am the one who snatched him away in the woods 20 years ago. I still remember how I lured him into my car. I remember how I knocked him unconscious. I remember how much I was shaking. I want you to know that I never touched him. Not like that. Anyway, I want that to be known. On the back of this letter are coordinates. Follow them, and more will be revealed. And if you tell the police about this, you will be throwing away your only chance to do right by Johnny. No more mysteries, no more games. It's time you learn why I did what I did. I sat there reading and rereading that letter for what felt like hours. There were two possibilities. Either the person who took Johnny 20 years ago really had sent me a letter confessing his guilt, or someone was messing with me, and I did not know which was worse. I flipped the letter over and looked at the coordinates, careful not to touch the paper too much. If this really was written by the person who took Johnny, I wanted to preserve the prints. Staring at the coordinates, my first instinct was to call the station, but then another thought came into my mind. I knew that if I showed up with other cops and the guy who took Johnny was there, he'd just get arrested. If I went by myself, I knew I could give him what he really deserved. No witnesses, no one to stop me from putting a bullet in his head. Besides, I could have just said it was self-defense. This man put Johnny's parents through hell. I wasn't about to pass up the opportunity to put him in the ground. I took a picture of the coordinates and plugged them into Google Maps. It was about a 30-minute drive, located deep in woods outside of town. I threw on my coat, grabbed my gun, and raced out to my car. I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over with how fast I was going. As I sped down the interstate, the leather on my steering wheel creaked beneath my grip. My knuckles turned white and I caught myself grinding my teeth together. I thought about what the letter said. How he bragged about seeing me in public. How many times had I walked past this guy? How many times had I passed by someone on the street corner? And that someone was him. I wasn't a cop at this point. I didn't have my badge or my lights on. I was just angry and ready to kill a man. Eventually, I turned onto an old dirt road. I followed the directions until I came upon a trail into the woods. Parking the car, I grabbed the flashlight from my glove box and stepped out. It was twilight, and the forest was quiet, blanketed beneath a thick layer of snow. Not even the birds were making a sound. It was that kind of silence you only find in the dead of winter. As I trudged through the woods, I only became more furious. I imagined what it must have been like when Johnny was brought here. A million questions raced through my mind. Was he unconscious as he was dragged through the snow? Was he even alive? Did he leave a trail of blood? Or was he wrapped tightly in a garbage bag? The coordinates took me off the trail and deep into the woods. I didn't even consider if I was going to be able to find my way back. I only had one thing on my mind. Finally, I reached the coordinates, only to find nothing. It was just a small clearing, snow-covered ground, bare trees, and the dark sky hanging above. I shined my flashlight around, desperately searching for something, anything. I double-checked my phone to make sure I was at the right spot. I was. Stumbling over to a dead log laying up against a small hill, I sat down. I buried my face in my hands and wiped away a few tears as my breath disappeared into clouds of vapor. The snow came up to my ankles, and the cold seeped through my boots. I slammed my fist down onto the decaying wood. I did it again. Then again. I shot to my feet and spun around, screaming into the empty forest as I furiously stomped down on the log. The dry wood splintered and cracked beneath my boot as I yelled every profanity I could think of. After what must have been my 10th kick, my foot broke through the hollow log and slammed into something behind it. Something metal. I stumbled back, my foot throbbing in pain. Shining my light through the newly formed hole in the log, I saw a rusted metal surface hiding beneath it. I frantically rolled the log aside, the wood breaking apart as I revealed what was underneath. Brushing the snow aside, I realized that what I was staring at was the entrance to a bunker. The wall opposite of that was, in fact, not a wall. but rather a glass divider, separating this section of the room from whatever was beyond it. Behind the glass was a thick blue mist, so dense that I couldn't even begin to see what was on the other side. "Johnny, are you here?" I shouted, running up to the glass and trying to peer through. Stepping back, I looked around the room in search of something to break the glass. That's when I saw it. On one of the computer screens was a recording titled "For Mathis." Approaching the screen, I moved the mouse over it and clicked play. "Hello, Detective Mathis." My grip on my gun tightened when I actually heard his voice. For 20 years, had imagined what this monster sounded like. Finally hearing it felt surreal. The voice was slightly garbled by a modulator, but I could still tell that he was around my age. Mid-60s at most. "If you're listening to this, then you read my letter. If you were hoping to arrest me, or maybe even kill me, I am sorry to disappoint you. I have taken exhaustive steps to cover my tracks. Even if you manage to find my identity, I will be long gone by then." I clenched my jaw, imagining how satisfying it would feel to choke him out. "I am sure you have many questions, and I think that this recording will answer most of them, but before I can explain anything, I think it is best to introduce you to someone." With that, the chamber behind the glass divider began to hiss. The fog quickly dissipated, and the room beyond was revealed. I don't think I'll ever be able to forget what I saw when the mist fully cleared. I still see it. Every time I close my eyes, every time I fall asleep, I see that thing. On the other side of the glass there was I don't even know what to call it. It looked vaguely humanoid, but its limbs were more akin to an arachnid. Countless fingers with numerous joints sprawled forth from its palms like a spider web. Its skin was brown and covered in a thick layer of slime that dripped down onto the floor. Its emaciated torso was hollow, its ribs curling outward to form a central cavity that bellowed slightly as the thing quietly breathed. "Detective Mathis," said the recording, "meet the basilisk. Whether that is its true name or simply what it has chosen to be called is beyond me." As my eyes traveled over the creature's horribly misshapen and grotesque form, I saw something that made my heart sink into my stomach. Encased within its open rib cage was a body. It was small, frail, and wrapped in a cocoon of sinew. It dripped with the strange fluid, and parts of its discolored skin seemed to be merging with the creature itself. Taking a step towards the glass, I let out a quiet gasp when I saw the strands of orange hair hanging from its scalp. "Johnny," I whispered. To my horror, one of his green eyes fluttered open, his irises bloodshot. He looked at me for a split second before his pupil rolled back into his head and he started to thrash about. He was alive. He was fucking alive. Through the glass, I could hear horrible, excruciating groans. I pray I never have to hear anything like that again. They reverberated off the walls of the bunker, the choked sobs of a child crying not because he is sad or because he needs attention, but because he is in pain. I pressed my hand against the glass and fought back tears as I watched Johnny, the boy I thought had been dead for 20 years, writhe in agony before my eyes. Suddenly, his screams were overpowered by a low groan. A strange clicking noise filled the room as the many elongated fingers of the basilisk began to twitch. After a few seconds, Johnny's muffled screams were silenced. His eye fluttered shut, and he went still. As he stopped moving, so did the basilisk. "Johnny! Johnny!" I screamed, pounding on the glass. Neither he nor the creature responded. "Incredible, isn't it?" The recording spoke again. "The basilisk came to me 20 years ago. Its spacecraft descended from the stars before my very eyes." I was barely listening to the recording at this point. My eyes were fixated on Johnny as he lay motionless inside the creature's chest. "Do you want to know the interesting part, Detective Mathis? When it came to me, I was a dying man. Brain cancer. Stage 4. Inoperable." His voice seemed sullen before perking up as he continued. "The basilisk cured me. I should have died years ago, but it halted my tumor in its tracks. I began to look around the room, searching for some way into the chamber, but I found nothing. Johnny was completely sealed off. Can you see it? The fluid that it is secreting. In that fluid lies the cure to cancer. Can you imagine a world where we do not have to fear such a horrid fate? The enzymes in that fluid were the key. I knew that if I could isolate them, learn how to replicate it, I could make cancer a thing of the past. And the basilisk was willing to help me." The voice paused for a second, and I could hear the man let out a sigh. "Except, it needed something from me. It wanted a child." I've replayed that part in my head more times than I care to admit. It never fails to make me sick. The basilisk is a creature of the abstract, It feeds off futures that never were, and there is no one who has more potential or imagination for the future as a child. Johnny is alive in there. The basilisk is keeping him alive, keeping his psyche trapped in the body of a child, dreaming of the future he never had. I know your first instinct will probably be to try and pull him out, but that won't save him. The basilisk has been feeding off of Johnny for 20 years. They are merged in body and mind. If you separate them, they both will die. I started to cry. I stumbled back and leaned against the operating table, unable to peel my eyes away from the glass. DeVos sighed deeply. I know you think I am a monster, Detective Mathis, but I stand by what I've done. Do you know why? He sounded so arrogant, so damn smug. Because I figured out how to replicate the enzymes. In a few years, I will have a cure to every type of cancer there is. Do you know how many children die of cancer every year? Nearly 100,000. Nearly 2 million children have died in agony since I first took Johnny. Since the first gave him to the basilisk, I had to do this. I have a duty to save as many as I can. And the basilisk never would have helped me if I hadn't given it a child. I sacrificed one so I could save millions. No matter how hard I try, I could not look away from the display on the other side of the glass. For more than a few seconds, the otherworldly, incomprehensibly twisted form of the basilisk, Johnny's nearly unrecognizable